Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I will be talking about my top 10 favorite romances of all time. So I recently did my top 10 favorite romance books for each subgenre, which I will link them all down below. I've done one on dark romance, fantasy, sci-fi and paranormal romance, mystery and suspense romance, erotica romance, and contemporary romance. So if you want to see my favorites from each romance subgenre, definitely check out the videos down below. This video is obviously dedicated to my overall top 10 favorite romances of all time. There are no separating by subgenre. It is literally just all of my favorite romances. I do kind of have a top 14. Like, I will mention 4 other ones, but those are kind of like the bonus ones. And then I do have a top 10. Making this list definitely made me question the other top 10 lists that I've done recently of all the subgenres. I feel like maybe, especially my contemporary one, I feel like maybe I would have switched some of the books up, like just the ranking, because I feel like some of them I put higher in this list than in the subgenre one, like just the contemporaries. I don't know, making this top 10 list for my favorite romances of all time was so hard, just because I feel like some I should have included, and then some I'm like questioning if I should include them because it's been a really long time since I've read them. But when I think of my favorite books, my favorite romances, all of these do come to mind. So for the bonus 4, we have The Learning Hours by Sarah Nye. This is the 3rd book in the How to Date a Douchebag series. This is a college new adult friends to lovers romance. I would say this is kind of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling a little bit. Like, our male character doesn't think very highly of himself. He kind of thinks he's ugly, and our female character is pretty and kind of popular a little bit. I just loved Rhett and Laurel, and I loved their romance, and I don't know, there was just something about this book that I thought was so special and unique, and it's a favorite forever. Coming in at number 13 is Change of Hearts by Nicole Jacqueline. This is a very intense enemies to lovers. It is, in my opinion, a very true hate to love romance. This follows Annie, who was a foster kid to Bram's family, like his parents and his siblings, so she's kind of like a foster sister, I guess. I believe Bram was kind of already out of the house when Annie arrived anyways, but they really despise each other. They hate each other until one night they have a night of passion, and it changes everything. This is very intense, very dramatic, very heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. I just loved the characters. I loved the romance, and I just always think of it as one of my favorite books. Coming in at number 12, we have the Ice Planet Barbarian series by Ruby Dixon. I genuinely really love this whole series. I love the first book, and I binged the entire series back in 2019, and I couldn't stop reading this series, and I just became super obsessed with it. I just had to include it on this list. Like, I just think of this series as one of my favorites. It is a series I can see myself rereading over and over again and not getting sick of. If you don't know what the series is about, it just follows these women who get kidnapped, and they end up getting stranded on this new planet, and they essentially have to adapt with these aliens that they meet. It's very fun, very smutty, and I love how the series gets more serious, and there are a lot of serious topics that are discussed. I just feel like this series is very heartwarming, and I don't know, I just absolutely love it. And see, now I'm like rethinking that order, because I feel like Ice Planet maybe should have been number 14. I feel like I'm never really going to be satisfied with this list. So just know that I love all of these books equally. It doesn't matter what I numerize them as. I love them all. But technically, coming in at number 11 is More Than Forever by Jay McLean. This is the 4th book in the More Than series, and this is a new adult high school college romance. It follows 2 young high schoolers who form a friendship and also begin dating, and it really just follows their entire relationship, like all throughout high school and through college, and it's just very beautiful, very heartwarming, very cute, very funny, also kind of heartbreaking at some moments. I absolutely love Cam and Lucy. I just had to mention this book as a favorite. It is so good, and I have reread this one countless times. I love this book. So here is technically the top 10. Coming in at number 10 is Love Game by Tracy Wolff. This is a mystery suspense romance. It follows Ian, who is a true crime novelist, and he is currently writing an expose on a serial killer, and all of his leads lead to this young Hollywood actress, and he decides to interview her. Veronica is trying to have like this very successful career, but there is a lot of stuff from her childhood and her past that is very traumatic. I feel like I'm not explaining this book very well at all, but I absolutely loved this book. I loved the mystery suspense aspect. I thought it was so well done. I loved the characters and the romance. I thought both characters were very interesting. I also just like loved the vibe of this book. Like it felt very dark and very mysterious, and it kind of made you question everything. I remember when I finished this book, I immediately wanted to pick it back up. Like I wanted to reread it again. There was just something so captivating about this book. I really, really loved it. Coming in at number 9 is Lover Awakened by J.R. Ward. This is the third book in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, and this follows Zadist. I never know how to pronounce his name. He is a very damaged and tortured vampire, and one night he ends up saving a female vampire from a horrible situation. Bella is immediately intrigued by him. She kind of starts looking up to him. She kind of slowly starts falling in love with him and seeing like this different side of him, but he is determined to think that he is not worthy of her and that he's not a good guy. Loved both characters so much. My heart broke for both of them so many times, and I absolutely loved their romance. I feel like I'm starting to lose adjectives for all of these books because I just love them so much, and I feel like I'm not going to be able to explain how much all of these books mean to me, but I obviously loved this book, and it has been years since I've read it, but I was kind of just like flipping through it a little bit as I was putting this list together, and I was like, yeah, this is one of my favorite books, and I really should reread it soon. Coming in at number 8 is the Born in Blood Mafia Chronicles by Cora Riley. I've decided to include this entire series at number 8. I just really, really, really love it. So book 1 is Bound by Honor, and this is the last book, book 7, which is Bound by the Past. I will say I do love Luca and Arya and Dante and Valentina a little bit more than the rest, but I love this entire series. This whole series is a dark mafia romance series, and basically all of them kind of have arranged marriages. I feel like plot-wise there isn't much to these books because it is just kind of like an arranged marriage and these characters trying to figure out how they fit in their marriage, and all of these like other families trying to kill other families and stuff. I really love all of these characters and this whole world. I will say like the first couple books in the series aren't the best. I feel like the series does get better as it goes along, but I just absolutely love this series, and it is for sure a all-time favorite. Coming in at number 7 is Marriage for One by Ella Mays. This one might be a little bit of a shock because in my top 10 favorite contemporary romances, this one wasn't that high on the list, and in this list it's a little bit higher just because I thought about it more and I was like, yeah, I really, really loved this. It's definitely going to be my favorite book of the year. I did read it this year. This follows Jack and Rose, who have a marriage of convenience. Rose needs to get married to inherit this building so that she can open up like her dream cafe, and Jack of course has like his own reasons for wanting to help Rose. This is a beautiful friends to lovers, slow burn romance. I feel like it took me a long time to like admit how much I loved this book because I just feel like it was so long and so many little things would happen. I think it was hard for me to admit that I just really loved it, and I was just nitpicking it, because the more I thought about this book, like the more I just genuinely loved it, and I thought it was the perfect book. And I just thought Jack was so romantic, and I just loved how much he loved Rose, and I love how Rose like slowly fell in love with him, and she saw like all the little things that he would do for her, and I don't know, I'm just obsessed with Jack and Rose. I really, really love them. Coming in at number 6, we have Real by Katie Evans and Legend by Katie Evans. This is kind of the same situation in my favorite contemporaries video. I basically could not separate these two. I just thought of them as equal favorites. Real follows Remy, who is a fighter, like a boxer or whatever, and our female character is his like sports therapist, and Remy has a lot of issues he's dealing with a lot, and Brooke really tries to take care of him and in a way kind of save him. And Legend takes place several years later, and it follows Maverick, who is also a fighter, and he is determined to kind of settle a personal score with Remy. And Maverick ends up falling in love with Brooke's cousin. So there's kind of a little bit of some family ties going on, and a little bit of forbiddenness in Legend. I just loved both of these books. I loved both couples. I feel like the characters are kind of similar a little bit, but I don't know, I just really loved them, and I have reread these books several times. They are just forever favorites. Coming in at number 5, we have the Fallen Too Far Trilogy by Abby Glines. Book 1 is Fallen Too Far, Book 2 is Never Too Far, and Book 3 is Forever Too Far. These are also the first 3 books in the Rosemary Beach series. This whole series has like trilogies and duologies within a series, if that makes sense. So the first 3 are about Rush and Blair. This follows Blair, who has recently lost her mother, and she is in search of her father. So she goes to the town where she thinks he's currently living, and that's Rosemary Beach. And upon arriving to his house, she meets her stepbrother, Rush. I really love this series. It's very dramatic. It's very over the top. It is very like early, 2010, 2011. Like, it's very reminiscent of that era and all of the romances that were kind of coming out in that time. I've read this series like 13 times. I absolutely love it. There is just something so addictive about Rush and Blair and their relationship, and just like the whole town. The characters are definitely sometimes kind of annoying, and they definitely make some really annoying decisions, like very questionable decisions, but I just can't help but love these characters and their whole journey. They are one of the first couples that I truly fell in love with, and I just was so captivated by their romance. Coming in at number 4 is Twisted Emotions and Twisted Bonds by Cora Riley. So this is book 2 and book 4 in the Komoro Chronicles series, but they follow the same couple. Again, this is another dark mafia romance. It follows Nino, who is the right-hand man to his brother, who is also his Chapo, and he is assigned to marry Kiara, who is the cousin of a Chapo in New York. So they end up being in an arranged marriage so that they can prevent war on both families. And Nino is kind of described as this character who's very closed off and emotionless. Like, he just doesn't feel anything. Kiara is a very shy, innocent, scared female character. Like, she's scared of entering this new family, and she's only ever heard like horror stories about the Falcone brothers, and she is just like terrified. And even though Nino is technically very scary and like very intimidating, he definitely tries to make Kiara feel more at ease and more welcomed into the family. And I don't know, there's just something so heartwarming and sweet about both of these characters. Like, they truly change for the better for each other. Absolutely love their romance. I love how slowly they fall in love with each other and how like careful they are with each other. And I just love the Falcone brothers and like this whole family that they have. It's just so beautiful, and I love these characters so much. They are my favorite couple that Cora Riley has ever created. I'm obsessed with them, and I just loved these books so much. Coming in at number 3 is the Monster in His Eyes trilogy by J.M. Darhauer. So book 1 is Monster in His Eyes, book 2 is Torture to Her Soul, and book 3 is Target on Our Backs. This is another dark romance. It is kind of a mafia romance slash like hitman romance. This essentially follows our female character, who is a college student, and one day she forgot her phone in one of her classes, and she tries to go back and get it, and she ends up overhearing this threatening conversation between our male character and one of her professors, I think. And our male character, Naz, becomes very interested in Carissa, and he's obviously hiding a lot of secrets. She's very innocent and a little naive, and she really has no idea who Naz is and like what kind of man he is, but they're both very intrigued by each other. I love this series so much. I just love how mysterious it is, how dark it is. I love Naz. Ignacio is like, he's amazing. I love him so much, and I really like Carissa. I think she is a very interesting, I wouldn't say complex, but she's like very refreshing in a weird way. Like I just really enjoy her as a character as well. But I loved their romance. I just loved their whole relationship, and I don't know, it was just so wonderful and dark. I couldn't stop reading the series. Like I literally binged this series, and I ended up like rereading the book like a month later because I couldn't help myself. I'm sure none of you are surprised that this is in my top 10 favorite romances of all time, because I literally could not stop talking about this series when I first read it, and I was just obsessed with it. I'm still obsessed with it. Like there are still scenes in here that I constantly think about. My, I guess, second favorite romance of all time is the Addicted / Calloway Sister series by Krista and Becca Ritchie. Again, this is a series that you cannot make me pick which one is a favorite. I love this entire series so much. I have always been obsessed with this series since like 2014. The first book is Addicted to You, and the last book is Some Kind of Perfect. I didn't want to grab the whole series just because it's a lot of books and they're really heavy, but I love this whole series. I love Lillian Lowe, Reich and Daisy, Rose and Connor. I just love them with like all of my heart. I feel like there's genuinely not enough words to describe how much the series means to me. Like I read this series as I was graduating high school, and it just had such a huge impact on me. I remember like reading these books as they were coming out. Like I remember when Hot House Flower came out. That was like the first book in the series that I got to read the minute it came out. I just couldn't help but fall in love with all of their romances and just the characters and everything that was going on. This series really just follows like 3 sisters and all of their romances, but the first couple of books follow Lily and Lo, who are both addicts. Lily is a sex addict and Lo is an alcoholic, and they start fake dating to hide their addictions from their families. And Lily and Lo are also like best friends. Like they've been friends since they were kids. It's a beautiful friends to lovers romance. I love this series. It is forever a favorite. It'll probably always be at number 2. Coming in at number 1, this is my favorite romance of all time, Chasing the Moon by S.M. Soto. This is probably not a surprise to a lot of people. I always say this is like my favorite book because it genuinely is my favorite book. This follows Celine, who has always had a huge crush on Endymion. She's always been in love with him, and they've kind of always had like these very special encounters over the years that Celine has really held on to. One night, I believe on her 18th birthday, she has a very unforgettable night with Endymion, and she thinks that it will be the beginning of them being together and him finally seeing her in this new light. However, the next day comes around and Endymion really just breaks Celine's heart, and she decides to leave for college. And now 6 years later, Celine is back into town to kind of take care of her dad and to be with her family, and she ends up bumping into Endymion, and she realizes she is still in love with him, and he kind of starts to see her in this whole new light, and things are very complicated and very messy between them. But this book is so heartwarming and heartbreaking, and it is occasionally over the top, but I absolutely loved every little bit of this book. Like, I loved every single moment of this book. I loved the writing, I loved the characters and the romance and just the overall plot and the way the story was told and the direction it went in. Like, I'm obsessed with this book. I'm forever obsessed with it. Even though I really, really love this book, I try not to talk about it that much because S.M. Soto was caught plagiarizing. And to my knowledge, this book was not plagiarized. Like, I don't think she copied anything from anybody with this book. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it was for her 2 other books. I don't agree with what S.M. Soto did. I think copying somebody else's work is a horrible, horrible thing, but I cannot ignore how much this book means to me. I also read this book before she was exposed for all of that, so I feel like it's still okay for me to love this book. Or that's what I tell myself anyways. I also am like a huge moon and stars lover, and I love any like metaphor or like any kind of symbolism with that, and just tying it together with like romance books and like characters and just like putting it in a romance book. Like, it just makes me obsessed with it. Honestly, if you were to ask me in general like what my favorite book is, I would always mention Chasing the Moon. This is my favorite romance. It's my favorite book, probably. I'm obsessed with this book, and I love it so much. I have like another edition of it. There are definitely not enough words to describe how much I love this book and just how much it means to me. And I love the cover. I love like the pages on the inside. So we have like Celine's chapters are with the moon. Endymion's chapters are with like the sun and sunflowers. It's just so beautiful. I love this book. It is literally like my baby. This is like my prized possession. At this point, I'm kind of just repeating the same words over and over again, but this is my favorite romance book of all time. So those were all top 10, or technically top 14 of my favorite romances of all time. Let me know if you have read any of these books and what your thoughts are on them, or let me know what your favorite top 10 romances of all time are. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, follow me on all my other social media, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!